doesn't love a good trilogy? I mean, the Star Wars series, the Godfather movies, Indiana Jones, just to name a few of my favorites. And this weekend, we have one of the biggest trilogy fights going down between heavyweights, Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic. What's up, fight fans? It's the MMA Plug, powered by DenverSportsBetting.com, your one-stop shop for everything Colorado sports. I'm Ron Kruck, joined again by my man, Jordan Kurtz. Jordan, we've witnessed some classic trilogies in the MMA world over the years, from Dos Santos versus Velasquez, Faber versus Cruz, Couture, Liddell, Hughes, GSP. There are so many to choose from. What's your favorite trilogy fight series?
I'm kind of torn, Ron. You know, there's a couple out there that are obviously huge ones. I think that a lot of people or a lot of fans who started watching around the time when I did, early to mid 2000s, really sort of gravitated toward that Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture sort of trilogy.
Yeah.
But then following from that, you had Frankie and Gray Maynard. That was an incredible trilogy that, it was 1-1-1. And very rarely do you see a 1-1-1 situation. Mm-hmm. And then, there's a litany of examples that you described, but those were a couple that stand out in my mind that we hadn't already touched.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm old school. I mean, in the early days, there was nothing like the buildup for the Iceman versus the Natural. And I was in Vegas for UFC 52. That was in 2005. I know, that's how old I am, buddy. But it was awesome. A huge event and pay-per-view. That event followed the Ultimate Fighter 1 finale, where the sport was blowing up. I mean, that finale on Spike TV peaked with like 10 million viewers. Of course, the epic battle between Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonnar. But Liddell versus Couture, for me, that was the second time that they faced off. And, Randy won that first fight. Chuck looking for revenge on April 16, 2005. A lightweight championship on the line, and it blew up. I mean, the arena in Vegas was electric. It was so big. It was the highest grossing UFC event ever at the time. The gate did like 2.5 million. And then the pay-per-view buys were like 280,000 pay-per-views. That shattered the company's record of 150,000 pay-per-views for UFC 40. So, of course, Liddell got his revenge. He crushed Couture that night in the first round, but one of the best live sports experiences I've ever had.
Oh, I can only imagine. And that makes me, I wish that the fans were able to be there for this trilogy, because, Ron, the atmosphere that was out there in the Honda Center in Anaheim last summer was electric. I mean, we're talking the build up, the fight right before that, with the way that Nate Diaz set the entire tone for everything, man. Calling out Masvidal right before that, the entire week, as far as just the spectacle of what that fight week was, of a heavyweight championship fight of two guys who are as highly accredited and heralded as these two who are going to be participating on Saturday is. It's a different world when you have elite level heavyweights competing. You don't see big bodies that are that elite very often.
I totally agree. And that we fast forward to 2020 and maybe the biggest trilogy fight in UFC history, going down at UFC 252 from Vegas. Definitely 100% the largest in the heavyweight division's history. Here's the setup, Jordan, more than just the rubber match and taking or retaining the championship belt. Legacies are on the line, and the winner will go down really as the top heavyweight in UFC history. And that's not coming from me. That's coming from the big boss, Dana White, saying that. He sees it as a no-brainer. And then, making it even more massive is the fight that there are all indications that Cormier will retire after this fight if he wins. And I wouldn't be shocked to see Stipe hang up the gloves if he wins as well. So this is a huge matchup. How did we get here? Well, quick little history lesson we'll go through. UFC champion Stipe Miocic had defended the heavyweight title 3 times before he was knocked out by Cormier in the first round of that first fight back in 2018. Stipe had set a UFC record with 3 consecutive title defenses. Streak came to an end that night. Fight number 2, Stipe won the rematch in 2019 via a 4th round stoppage. In a fight, DC was controlling and winning by many on the scorecards until the 4th and decisive round when the game plan changed and Stipe attacked the body of DC with left hooks, and the onslaught finally took its toll on Cormier, and Miocic was able to finish him and end that fight. So we're at 1-1. Jordan setting up the 3rd installment for the heavyweight title and the baddest man on the planet award. The main card will air as a pay-per-view on ESPN Plus. Prelims will air on ESPN and ESPN Plus, and the early prelims going down on UFC Fight Pass. Current odds for the heavyweight championship by denversportsbetting.com, and FanDuel has this as even as it can be, Jordan. Miocic opened up as a -110 favorite. He is down to -102. Cormier, same thing. It was even odds, -110 opened. A little bit more of a favorite. Some money coming in on DC at -116. Jordan, break down this matchup for us, bud.
It's going to be a crazy matchup to break down. I feel like, DC has put a lot of effort into this camp. I know one of his chefs personally, Tyler Minton, the Melee Way. He was out there living in home with DC for the first few weeks of this camp, and then congratulations, Tyler, going out and taking on those duties to really, and you could see through the progression of the weeks with DC and Helwani, just the figure of DC's head. It went from being a very round head to now he looks like he's in shape now that it's fight week. Over the course of the last couple of months that he's been doing his show with Ariel Helwani. But I also know that in any of the content that Stipe has put out recently, Stipe looks to be in some of the best shape that he's been.
Right.
My big question for Stipe, though, and this is what really is my biggest concern for him, is what are the condition of his eyes? Something that we can't physically see.
Right.
Because the eye pokes were very definitely a factor in both of those first 2 fights. And one could make the argument that within the first matchup, is DC able to clip him? Yes, I understand the fight IQ aspect, and DC believes that he had a tell that out of the clinch, Stipe would drop a hand and he could catch him. But also, you have to keep in mind that that was the eye that had the severe eye poke to it. If Stipe is even able to see that slightly coming in from his periphery, is he able to do enough to avoid the knockout blow? I think that that's a big question, is how well is he going to be able to see that? But there's a lot of things that push the fight into DC's favor as we're talking for this matchup on Saturday. One of the biggest advantages for him, Ron, in my opinion, is the fact that it's a 25-foot cage. DC is an Olympian-level wrestler. He has been on record stating that on Saturday night, Stipe, you better bring your wrestling shoes. So with that being the case, and it tending to favor the grappler in a shorter cage or a smaller cage, and their big bodies, it's not like even the smaller weight classes where you can kind of move around still. Stipe's 6'4". That's not a big man to be able to create space and to be able to move when you have just a little bulldog who's pressing up against you with pressure. So it's going to be a tight fight. I think it's going to come down to the little minutia of the fight. When I always think of the Al Pacino Any Given Sunday speech, that who's willing to fight, scratch, claw, bleed, die for that last inch. Right. And whoever is willing to go that far is who is going to have their hand raised. And I think that you're right. I would not be surprised if both guys retire.
Yeah, I mean, what a massive buildup, and I think you hit on one of the big points too, with the size of the cage at the Apex in Vegas. You know, in that Stipe loves to use his, and it was the key in that second fight. It was once he got that movement going and started to really wear DC down and cut off angles and got that footwork going. That really changed the fight. So the smaller cage 100% benefits the wrestler in DC. You also, the eye injury coming back from that is huge. Even just a mental aspect. That first time you take a shot to that eye, can Miocic, can he shake that off and feel like he's fine? You know, if Stipe wins, he's basically overcome every potential challenge to his throne. He's beaten some of the biggest and baddest men on the planet. I mean, we know the list from Verdum, Hunt, Arlovsky, Overeem, all those guys, and defended the heavyweight title more than any other fighter. It comes down for me, Jordan, is he has better cardio and striking, and his game plan, I think, will be to try once again wear DC down, break his body down. The longer the fight goes, the better for Stipe. Use his movement and footwork. Maybe he'll do that a little bit earlier than he did in that rematch. Not wait till the fourth round. But then you got DC. I mean, he has done so much as well. Former 2-division title holder. You know, first fight that he won, brilliant. He kept the fight tight. He landed that close range shot that KO'd Stipe. Can he bait Stipe into that close quarter stand-up war again? If he does, as we saw in the first fight, he has the ability to end the fight in an instant and quickly with a big shot. Or will he take advantage of the smaller cage and use his world-class wrestling this time around? You know, he says in his interviews leading up to this fight, I'm going to use all my tools, but we really haven't seen him break out that wrestling against Stipe yet. So, you know, it'll be interesting whose game plan is implemented better. And, you know, one of the X factors for me, Jordan, is just the fact as Stipe is younger, you know, 37 years old. He's no spring chicken, but 4 years younger than DC. And DC has had a lot of wear and tear on that body wrestling for so many years. So that leads us to the pick. Jordan, I will hand it over to you. Who do you like winning the UFC heavyweight championship?
For a lot of those last reasons that you just said right there, I'm going to go with Stipe. I think that Stipe being the younger fighter, albeit not by much, but as we know from all sports, once Father Time comes in, the fall off is quick. You know, it's a pretty steep fall off.
Especially in MMA, right?
Exactly. Yes, sir. So with that being said, we don't know if that has met DC within this last year, especially with him yo-yoing with his weight and everything so bad. I'm going to go with Stipe. And still,
I thought that we were gonna disagree on this one, my man, but it's as close of a coin flip as you can get. I think MMA fans are really the big winners in this. I mean, you'll see two of the most accomplished professional fighters throw down at UFC 252. You know, you add to the fact that they both have really solid chins in MMA, and this thing is just got fireworks written all over it. Again, I think it comes down who can impose their game plan. Will DC use some takedowns and wrestling? Stipe is movement and striking. Which game plan works this time around? I, too, am going to go with Stipe. I think he's going to be able to, even in the smaller cage, use his cardio to his benefit and his striking, wear DC down, get him into those championship rounds. And that's where I think he'll secure either a late stoppage or a decision win, and he will defend his belt. Not super confident because DC is not a bad play either, but I'm going to go with the firefighter and paramedic from Cleveland. As this recording, denversports.com and FanDuel odds have the have it as close as it can be. Miocic is minus 102 and Cormier is a minus 116. That is your odds coming from denversportsbetting.com, your one-stop shop for everything Colorado sports. This is the MMA Plug, sponsored by denversportsbetting.com. Ron Kruck and Jordan Kurtz with you, as always, as we break down the massive UFC 252 pay-per-view card. Jordan, the storyline in the co-main event is, can the Sean O'Malley hype train keep rolling? People have been jumping aboard the Sugar Show recently, and he's delivered some spectacular finishes. There's no doubt about it. Unbeaten, unreal knockouts, and possibly unrealistic expectations. At 25 years old, time will tell if O'Malley is the next big deal, but many people are drinking the Kool-Aid and buying the hype and believe he is. He will be tested in this co-main event when he matches up with the young yet veteran fighter in Marlon Vera, only 27 years old, but has had 22 professional bouts, a lot of them big-time wars. The co-main event of UFC 252 and the entire main card will air as a pay-per-view on ESPN+, prelims on ESPN and ESPN+, and the early prelims will air on UFC Fight Pass. Current odds from denversportsbetting.com and FanDuel. Jordan, they have made Sean O'Malley a massive favorite in this one, coming in at the time of recording at minus 310. And Vera, the comeback on the underdog, is at plus 250. Break down this fight for us.
This fight is another, the main and the co-main, these were really, this is a thank you to the matchmakers. This is from all the fans. I mean, we are the ultimate winners when it comes to these two matchups right here.
Yep.
Because and the masses may not necessarily know who Chito is yet, but Chito is as strong of a fighter as it gets. I'm a huge Chito Vera fan, but I do think that the Sugar Show rolls on Saturday, and let me tell you exactly why. I think that it's going to come down to a couple of things, and they're just things that are not able to be overcame by somebody like Chito. And that is the size, the length. I think that length is going to be an issue. Sugar Sean is extremely long and lanky. He fits that new mold of the modern MMA fighter, if you will, that's super long and lanky within their division and their weight class. And he is so precise with his strike. It's not just that he hits hard, Ron. It's that he is precise with his striking. And, it kind of goes back to the old Conor McGregor quote in, the precision, timing beats speed, precision beats, all blah, 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 goes into the full, Conor rant with that. And he checks all of those boxes. He is fast. He is precise. He is very, very calculated when he's in there, and he doesn't really engage in a firefight that we've seen. I think that Chito will try to make this nasty. I think that is Chito's key to success, is trying to get inside so that he is unable to use those kicks. Make sure that Sean can't extend his arms on those straight punches, and potentially maybe take him to the ground and grapple. I know Chito likes to brawl, and he has solid grappling. Sean's grappling, I believe, is underrated, as he showed in the Quintet tournament, that he could hold his own. But I think that he just has so many things going for him right now that it's a very good chance that he knocks Chito out. Because I think that Chito will want to engage in that firefight because he wants to put on that spectacle performance. He wants to have that $50,000 performance worthy, that sort of highlight reel finish. He wants to have that. He is really, really chomping at the bit right now to write the narrative after he got what a lot of people felt was a raw deal against Song Yadong a couple of months ago. So I think that he comes out with a head full of steam, albeit a calculated head full of steam, but he's going to brawl. He fights very similarly to Jonathan Martinez, who we just recently saw in the UFC. He's a guy who is not afraid of a firefight. But because of that factor alone and because of his willingness to engage, I think that the striking of Sean O'Malley is going to get it done.
Yeah, might not be the best game plan when you're going up against O'Malley. The guy is show-stopping finishes. He comes into this fight 12-0, 8 of those victories by knockout or TKO. Earned either a fight of the night or a performance of the night bonus in 3 of his octagon appearances. I mean, fans are still buzzing about what he did to Eddie Wineland with that sick knockout in the first round. O'Malley comes in. He is riding high. Confidence is super high. You know, launched the Sugar Show on social media too, so look out for that. You know, this is a guy who incorporates real good movement and footwork, has I think some underestimated wrestling defense, decent chokes, but he will have his hands full. I think this is going to be his toughest test with Vera. You know, 8 submission wins out of his 15. Veteran who really has come into his own recently, Jordan. I mean, 5-1 over his last 6 fights. And again, as I said, he's still young, 27 years old, kind of entering into his athletic prime right now. And he's, you know, you look at what he's done. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, super tough, never been finished. And 14 of those 22 professional fights coming in the UFC. So, you know, his experience could pull off an upset, 10 more pro fights than O'Malley has. You know, strong grappler, as I said. So there are some, and he comes from a very solid camp too, with Team Oyama. So a lot going the way of Vera. One quick X factor that I found was interesting, and just looking and breaking down this fight and some of the comments from O'Malley was he's really disappointed that this fight is happening with no fans. You know, he said he was rewatching his fight from UFC 248, and the pop that he got when the fans erupted was the key. You know, he builds off that. So I don't think it will be a huge factor, but something to kind of keep an eye on as we get to the experienced fighter versus the top prospect. Jordan, give us your pick in the co-main event.
For the co-main event, I think that Chito has a veteran's chance, just like how we saw Derek Brunson against Edmund Shabazian a couple of weeks ago. However, I think that the tools that Sugar Sean O'Malley brings, you know, is just too sweet. I'm going to go ahead and play off of his name right there.
No,
Sugar
you
Sean
didn't.
Toss.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I'm going with the Sugar Show on this one. I think he gets it done.
Yeah, you know, spectacular striker versus grappler and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. It's an intriguing matchup stylistically. A lot on the line in this one for sure. Winner gets into that title conversation, especially for O'Malley. You know, a win for O'Malley. You know, he goes from one of the bantamweight division's top prospects to full-blown contender, and he might get that showdown that he has been asking for with Cody Garbrandt. I think that O'Malley will be able to keep the fight standing. He'll use his movement and striking. Underrated ground game, he might be able to withstand anything Vera throws at him if he is to get him down. But I believe the hype train in O'Malley keeps rolling in this one. As this recording, DenverSportsBetting.com and FanDuel have O'Malley as a -310 favorite, and the comeback on Vera is +250. Thanks for checking out the MMA Plug, sponsored by DenverSportsBetting.com. Ron Kruck and Jordan Kurtz with you as we break down the massive UFC 252 pay-per-view card. We're at that point in the show, Jordan, where we pick a fight or a fighter to keep an eye on, and there's a lot to choose from on this card. So what fight or fighter is intriguing you?
There's a lot, just like you said. I mean, you can take you can almost throw a dart at the wall of matchups and say, man, there's a reason why you should keep your eye. But the one that I would like to shed some light on that I think is a good matchup of someone who's on the rise as opposed to the wily veteran who's kind of making a late renaissance and resurgence in this latter stage of his career. And I'm going to go with Jim Miller against, and I'm going to butcher the name, Vince Pichel.
You got it.
And I say that just simply because Jim Miller, it seems like he's revitalized himself ever since he's gotten his health in check. He obviously he's very openly battled Lyme disease for years, but it seems like he's kind of gotten all of the health stuff in line. And I say that sounding like just a non-educated medical person that way, because I'm not. So people don't get the wrong idea. Right. I just know that's what he says, is that he's gotten gotten all of that end of his life together, and he's had a resurgence ever since then. Pichel is a guy who is on the rise, and I think that he's going to give him a run for his money. But we also saw him just face a similar test of that white-hot surging prospect with Roosevelt Roberts a couple of months ago, and he excelled in that. So I'm interested. I think that Jim Miller might be able to, that old dog might be able to have one more trick to pull out of the hat.
Leave it to Miller to do that. The veteran of this 46 professional fights always brings it. That is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Couple that I've kind of been going back and forth with, it was tough to choose from. The other heavyweights with Junior Dos Santos, the number 5 ranked heavyweight, and Jair Rosenstoik. That one is going to be a lot of fun. Both fighters need to bounce back from knockout losses, as Dos Santos fell to Curtis Blades, and Rosenstoik dropped the first fight of his professional career to Francis Ngannou. That was just 20 seconds. So it's always interesting to see how a fighter rebounds from that fight. Right now, the current odds have Rosenstoik as a minus 138, comeback on Dos Santos, the former champion, at plus 118. Interesting. Might want to take a little look at that one if you like an underdog. But I'm interested in seeing the strawweight matchup between the Lil Bulldog, Felice Herrig, the former UFC Ultimate Fighter standout, and the Brazilian, the former Invicta champion, Virna Jandiroba. Current odds on this fight from Denver Sports Betting and FanDuel. Felice Herrig is a massive underdog at plus 270, plus 270, and Jandiroba minus 335. And there is some major coin coming in on the Brazilian. Some sports books had her as a minus 155 favorite when this opened, now up to minus 335. Yeah, major shift in the line. But, here comes Herrig, returning to competition for the first time since October 6, 2018, coming off major ACL knee surgery. I think it's a 679-day layoff, longest of her more than 11-year career. Lost 2 in a row, most recently to Michelle Waterson. And in true UFC fashion, they didn't give her a gimme for her return fight. She gets 15-1. Werner, the former Invicta champion, 15-1, 12 of those victories coming by way of submission. No gray area to what she does well. Won 4 out of 5, with her only loss being against Carla Esparza. But, when I see a line shift like that, Jordan, there's usually a reason for it. Jandiroba opening up at minus 155, now up to minus 335. I think there's a lot going on with Herrig. The long layoff, the knee surgery, that where is she mentally and emotionally as she comes in here back from that injury? That's a lot to be facing in your return to the UFC. Herrig, of course, has a chance. She always brings it. Big key will be, can she use her takedown defense and stay off the mat? But I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going with the favorite in this one to work a submission victory.
I think that you're spot on with that analysis right there. I mean, not a lot of people know who Verna is, but as time continues to go on, they will, because she is nasty. And her most recent fight against Mallory Martin, I'm a huge Mallory Martin fan. I think she's almost like the women's version of Habib. The way that she can just control and maul other women in the cage. And that was, that wasn't something she was able to accomplish against Verna.
Good.
So someone who is that dominant against everybody else that she's fought in the recent history, that tells me something. That tells me that Verna has the sauce, that she's got some very special tools. And, is this kind of a repeat of the Paige and Amanda Ribas situation?
Interesting analogy. We will see. That's why they fight. We cannot wait. Jordan, UFC 252 going down on Saturday. Going to be a lot of fun. Enjoy the fights, my man.
Yes, sir. You too.
Thank you. Thanks for checking out Denver Sports Betting and the MMA Plug. Check back here for more UFC event previews, breakdowns, and check out Denver's hottest new sports site, denversportsbetting.com. For Jordan Kurtz, I'm Ron Kruck. We'll see you next time.